Angels Care Home Health, serving Hayes and the surrounding areas, is a Medicare-certified home health agency providing quality skilled nursing and restorative therapy services to patients in their homes.
They're polite. I mean, they just take the time for you.
Angels Care is there to help 24 hours a day, and all services are covered 100% by Medicare for patients who are eligible.
I like the Angels for what they've done for me.
Angels Care Home Health. We serve patients.
Eagle Community Television presents Community Connection with your host, Mike Cooper.
Hello and welcome again to Community Connection from Eagle Community Television. Thanks for watching, and thanks as always to the producer of our series, Jeff DeRoll. We're at the Victory Garden at Fort Hays State University with Dr. Jean Gleichner, Associate Professor of Agriculture at Fort Hays State University. We're going to talk about gardening, the Victory Garden, and composting with Dr. Gleichner. And welcome again, Jean. Good to have you back with us again on Community Connection. Let's start, if we might, with the Victory Garden itself. What are we seeing here, Jean?
Well, 2 years ago, we got a very nice grant from the Kansas Health Foundation, and so it's allowed us to create some infrastructure here. We had a small garden on campus by the physical plant, but with the expansion of the campus, we had to find a new location, and we found a perfect one here. And so that funding from the grant has allowed us to purchase a little shed for tools. We have a little hoop house here that we can start plants inside. Then we've got all these raised beds. We've got in the back an area for composting, and we're going to be actually bringing in some bees. We've got some interest in in beekeeping, and so it just keeps expanding. It's amazing what some of the students have thought of including, and we're actually working on the construction of an little outdoor classroom so that people could come out here and have class and enjoy the scenery.
I wondered about the location just east of the Robin Center here. We're down in the area where the bonfire normally occurs, but because of the low-lying area, you actually had to raise the garden, didn't you?
Yes, we were worried that we were going to have flooding, and you can see some of that evidence there. But the grounds crew was really great. They brought in some soil, they elevated us, and then of course we're using raised boxes, which make it a little bit easier for us to work in.
Well, now you've already got the beds started. What are we seeing in the beds? What are they going to be growing, Jean?
Well, it looks like they planted some flowers over there. They've started some of the cole crops, like onions. They're also going to be working on renovating some of the beds. We're going to be removing some of the soil and replacing it with a little better quality soil. We had some issues with drainage last year, so we're going to try to improve that. The big event that's coming to campus on the 31st, we're going to have students come out and help us reinvigorate the beds, and then also spread some more chips in the alleyways so that when people are working, we're not creating a mess.
Well, and you've got water sources too. Each of the beds has irrigation, right, Jean?
Yeah, we installed drip irrigation with the intent of making sure that we're water wise. That was one of the things. And of course, we're using mulches in the beds and things like that. We're trying to be as water wise on campus as we are water wise in the city of Hays.
And you're also incorporating this into a learning opportunity for the students, and the garden itself is going to be a benefit to the students, Jean.
That's correct. Part of the grant was for the garden, but we also got some money to help with our food pantry on campus, and that is located in the library. And the intent is that some of the vegetables that we grow in the garden are going to be available to the students in the library, in the food pantry.
Now, part of the overall scenario here at the Victory Garden is the compost area. We see that to the back of us there, and that's one of the reasons that we wanted to talk with Dr. Gleichner is about composting. She did a presentation at the Science Cafe located at Gella's and talked about composting. So let's get to that, if we might. You've brought a poster here.
Yes, I'm going to make a couple of plugs. The Kansas Garden Guide, which is available through the Extension Service, is a good resource for gardeners. It's got a very nice chapter on composting. And then I brought my poster here to kind of show you the process. I think some people think composting is very complicated. It's not. Nature does it all the time. It's just that we want to go ahead and speed it up a bit. And so when we start with composting, basically you can use your yard waste. There are a few things that you don't want to include in your compost. meats. Sometimes people will use kitchen waste, which is fine, but don't put meats and fats into your compost pile. And also avoid woody products unless you can chip them. One of the things at the Hays City compost, they don't accept wood products anymore,
Right.
because unless they have been chipped, there's just not enough surface area to break down very fast. And so, but leaves, grass clippings. In fact, I actually encourage my students in class to just mulch their yard using a mulching mower. And so instead of putting those grass clippings, even though they're going to eventually return them, is just use a mulching mower and return them right there. Rather than collecting them. Makes mowing much, much quicker. But you know, anything in your garden that's waste can go into your compost pile. And so it's amazing how Mother Nature can recycle that, because you've got the microbes, and they're illustrating that here with the bacteria and the fungi. Those are kind of the silent workers because we don't see them. And then you'll eventually see some other critters coming up. But the pile can really heat up fairly fast. You want to have a large enough pile. Usually they say 1 cubic foot, so 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet. Otherwise, you don't have a large enough mass. And so people that don't have a lot of waste, in some cases, may benefit from just using compost produced by the city. They're welcome to take their materials there. They'll compost them, and then they are welcome to come back and get them. You'll also be, of course, sharing the wealth with others because it's free. And so they don't charge you to deposit anything. They don't charge for anybody to take compost at the site.
Well, now this one has a barricade, a fence type structure around it. Is that generally one of the best ways to contain the organic material, Jean?
Well, you can use fencing, or you can use pallets. You don't have to spend a lot of money. You can go online and find a lot of very expensive equipment to do composting, but even just piling it up will allow the composting process to occur. But a lot of times people like to have it a little tidier, so that's why they sometimes will have it in an area. And I actually like what they call the 3 bin system. And what you do is you create 3 bins out of pallets, and then you start with the first bin, you put your materials in, and then when you turn it to introduce oxygen, you turn it into the second bin, and then by the time you turn it into the third bin, it should be finished. And then that way you can keep adding more materials to the first bin, so you're not trying to get your compost finished and then adding new materials. Because you really want to get your compost finished so you can use it in your garden.
And that was a question I had about how labor intensive was this going to be. But with the 3 bin system, you can actually move from one to the other, and that's basically all you do, right?
Right. Yeah. You just when it's time, and you can kind of monitor the temperature when the temperature starts dropping a little bit, and you can also kind of tell if your pile smells. That's not good news. Usually means it's too wet. You can also sometimes tell it's too dry. You might have to add a little water, especially with the wind that we have. And your water content should be like a squeezed sponge. It shouldn't be dripping water. And it's just a matter in some cases of kind of figuring it out yourself. But you'll want to introduce oxygen, and in turning that, that allows those microbes to get the oxygen they need. And usually you'll find at the bottom of the compost pile, it might smell a little like ammonia, but your pile in general should not smell. You should not, if your pile smells, you're not doing something right.
Okay.
And so that's what a lot of people think, well, I don't want a stinky pile in my backyard. But if it's not done right, then you will have a problem. And if you keep out meats and other things, you shouldn't have any dogs or cats or raccoons or anything digging in your pile.
So just as to repeat, a natural compost pile that's doing what it should not have any smell to it.
No, and when your compost is finished, it'll have that nice earthy smell that we're so often associated when we till the soil. And so when you're finished with your compost, you have some choices. You can mix it with some other potting media and pot in it. You can mix it into your soil before planting. You can also do a little top dressing. I've seen people top dress their lawns. You have to be very careful not to put on a lot, but it'll filter down. And so it's great material, because one of the best things we can do is keep out those yard waste out of our landfills. We've got enough things that unfortunately we can't recycle, but we can recycle yard waste and some other things.
And one of the things you brought out at the Science Cafe was the secret to a good compost pile. And there's really a main secret, isn't there, Jean?
I guess I don't remember what secret I revealed.
The worms?
Oh, okay. Well, now vermiculture is a little different. Now you will have worms coming in, but vermiculture is usually done inside.
Okay.
And that was kind of the focus, is because some people say, well, I don't have a large enough place to compost, but I have kitchen waste.
Or
and
if I'm in an apartment and
Right.
don't have the facility to do that.
Right.
Okay.
You can use worms, and they're specifically designed to do a good job of recycling your materials. And again, if your bin is working right, nobody will even know it's there. And so you can feed them coffee grounds, eggshells, again, no meats and oils and things like that, but they're also nature's recyclers.
And you're going to have worms coming into your compost pile anyway as a natural part of the process.
Right. And so it's kind of cool because everybody can get involved, even those that are somewhat confined because they don't have space outside. They can do composting inside, and they can use that compost that they create inside in their potted plants, or again, just spread it in their yard. But it's a great material.
And as far as composting goes, there are certainly a lot of advantages to it, aren't there, Jean?
Oh yeah, as I mentioned, it's really nice to be able to reuse. Essentially, you've paid money to grow your plants, you've used dollars to water them, to fertilize them, and it's a shame to throw those fertilizer dollars away by throwing away that plant material. So essentially, we're going to recapture some of those nutrients, and we can reduce the cost that we spend on fertilizer.
So cost is one thing. There's energy savings that are done.
Right, and then also that compost again can be used as mulch, so it can help reduce water loss and also preserve whatever moisture you have in the soil. And certainly that's important in western Kansas.
You also said that composting itself rebuilds the soil, re-energizes the soil as well.
Yes, because one of the things that we often forget is how important soil structure is, and organic matter is really key to maintaining soil structure. In other words, you get good drainage, water moves in the soil, it doesn't sit on top and pond. You also can hold nutrients in the soil. So compost really is one of those things you just cannot say enough about. It's very difficult sometimes to put dollars and cents on it, but it's invaluable.
And Jeff, you probably noticed that Dr. Gleichner related the same thing that our extension agents, Holly Dickman and Terry Manell, said about mulching your grass rather than bagging it. Jeff said after he listened to Terry all those years that he hasn't bagged grass since.
Well, when we first came to Hayes in 1988, my husband looked around, he goes, there must be some ordinance. We must have to bag our grass. and then he finally, the light came on, and he says, you know what? He says, I'm going to get a mulching mower, and he says, I'm not bagging, and it takes him hardly any time to mow the grass. And the nice thing about it is we're recycling those clippings back on our yard.
Yeah,
and
the nutrients go right back to the soil, don't they?
And so it's a real shame when we see people hauling that away.
And finally, Jean, we've covered a lot of information here. What's a good source for people who want to go investigate more on recycling and composting? What source do they go to?
Well, the city has some good resources. City of Hayes, as I mentioned, the Extension Office has publications on composting, and there is a lot of information on the internet. And so as long as you're going to a valid site, science related, the information there is a great mindset. And then also, as I mentioned, experience. You just get started, you try something, and you sort of tweak your system, but it's not hard. You just have to get started. And I guess the great benefit is you know exactly what's going into your compost pile. So you feel a lot better when you're putting that material back on your garden or on your lawn, because you know what went into the pile. And so some people are a little leery to go to get the city compost because they're not sure what's in it. But by and large, the city has used it extensively in the parks, and they've had no issues. And so people should feel confident that the city compost is great quality. But if they want to create their own, that's even better.
And if you want some information on what to plant in your garden, there's a great K-State publication there that Jean showed us.
You can go down to the Extension Service, and really this is a gem with regards to kind of from start to finish. But the book contains lots of information on different vegetables, and in the back there's a planting guide. Some people are not sure what time of the year they should be planting things. And so this is, in a nutshell, one of the best resources that you can get at the Extension Office.
Professor, you did a wonderful job. Thank
Well,
you
thank
very
you.
much. Dr. Jean Gleisner, Associate Professor of Agriculture at Fort Hays State University, from the Victory Garden, just east of Robbins Center, on the campus of Fort Hays State University, our Community Connection.
Angels Care Home Health, serving Hays and the surrounding areas, is a Medicare certified home health agency providing quality skilled nursing and restorative therapy services to patients in their homes.
And the Angel Care nurse comes to see me once a week.
Angels Care is there to help 24 hours a day, and all services are covered 100% by Medicare for patients who are eligible.
Angel Care has helped to stay home.
Angels Care Home Health. We serve patients.